It is January 9th, 1995, on the campus of the University of Alaska Anchorage, and a cow moose with her calf has been standing outside the gymnasium for most of the afternoon. Students have been taunting her for hours, throwing snowballs, yelling, whistling, moving closer to take photographs. The moose does not flee. She does not charge. She simply stands there, unmoving, while the crowd grows louder and the snowballs keep coming. To the students watching, her stillness looks like indifference. It is not indifference. It is a line being drawn that nobody can see. Myung-Chin Ra is 71 years old. He arrives at the gym to use the sauna and finds the moose blocking the entrance. He has not been part of the harassment. He has only just arrived. He tries to slip past her across a narrow stretch of icy pavement. The moose turns and charges him. He falls. She stomps him repeatedly with her hind legs. By the time help arrives, he is already gone, killed by an anger he did nothing to earn. When most people think about dangerous animals in North America, they think about bears, grizzlies in particular, with their size and their reputation and their long history in the cultural imagination of the wilderness. They think about wolves, mountain lions, and rattlesnakes. They think about predators, animals with teeth and instincts built around the hunt. Nobody thinks about the moose. And that single assumption, that a plant-eating animal cannot be as dangerous as a predator, is responsible for more wildlife injuries in the northern half of this continent than almost any other belief people carry into the outdoors. In Alaska, a state that is home to approximately 30,000 grizzly bears and 100,000 black bears, moose injure more people than both of those bear species combined every single year. That statistic does not come from a wildlife enthusiast's website or a hiking forum. It comes from the Alaska Department of Fish and Game, the official state authority on wildlife interaction data. Across all of North America, moose attack more people annually than bears and wolves combined. The reason for this is not that moose are more aggressive than predators. It is that they are more numerous. They have far less fear of humans than bears typically do, and they occupy the same spaces: the trailheads, the residential edges, the ski resort parking lots, the university campuses, where millions of people move through their territory every single day without giving them a second thought. But there is something deeper than proximity at work here, and it is the thing that makes a prey animal genuinely more dangerous than a predator in the right circumstances. A predator typically attacks to feed or to defend territory, and it performs a threat assessment before committing to violence. A prey animal protecting its young or defending itself from a perceived threat does not perform that assessment. It acts. It acts completely, and it does not stop until it believes the threat is gone. Before this video is over, you will understand the single deadliest way that moose kill people across North America. And it is not a direct attack. But we need to start with what the animal itself actually is, because most people have never truly understood the scale of what they are standing next to. The moose is the largest member of the deer family on Earth and the largest land mammal in North America after the bison. A bull moose in Alaska stands 7 feet tall at the shoulder, the same height as the tallest NBA players ever officially measured. He can weigh 1,600 pounds. The largest moose on record, taken in the Yukon, exceeded 1,800 pounds. These are not estimates or rough approximations. They are documented measurements from verified biological records published in Britannica. That size, carried on 4 long legs built for deep snow and dense forest terrain, means a charging moose reaches 35 miles per hour across virtually any surface. Packed snow, shallow river water, loose forest undergrowth, or a suburban backyard. There is no meaningful gap between a human's maximum sprinting speed and the cruising speed of a moose that has decided to close the distance. You cannot run faster. The mathematics do not support it. But speed and size are not the most dangerous things about a moose. The most dangerous things are its hooves. A moose can kick in every direction, forward, backward, and directly sideways, with a force that exceeds 1,000 pounds per strike. Wildlife biologist John Krause, director of the Kenai Moose Research Center and a moose researcher with decades of field experience, describes a hard hind leg kick from a moose this way. When the hoof comes back at the end of the motion, you can hear the tendons and ligaments snap like a whip cracking. When a moose rears onto its hind legs during an aggressive encounter, it goes from being 7 feet tall at the shoulder to 9 feet in the air, with its front hooves above the height of most people's heads. From that position, the Alaska Department of Fish and Game states plainly, there is no safe angle from which to be standing. What makes this more dangerous still is that moose are extraordinarily difficult to spot before an encounter has already begun. Despite their size, they are built in coloration and shape to disappear into the dense brush and alder thickets where they spend most of their time. More attacks begin not with a charge from a visible distance, but with a moose that was completely invisible in the undergrowth until it was already within striking range. With that understanding of what a moose is physically capable of, there are 3 specific conditions under which its behavior shifts from passive to dangerous, and it is worth knowing all 3 before you spend any time in moose country, because they cover nearly every season of the year. The first is the rut. Between late September and October, a bull moose undergoes a hormonal shift that wildlife researchers describe as a state of sustained chemical aggression. His testosterone reaches levels that effectively override his normal threat assessment instincts. He stops eating almost entirely during this period, losing up to 1/3 of his body weight across those weeks. He becomes willing to charge at vehicles, other large animals, and people who simply cross his line of sight at the wrong moment. There is documented footage of rutting bull moose charging parked cars in residential streets in Anchorage, not because the cars posed a threat, but because the animal had reached a state where the distinction between a genuine threat and a perceived one had largely collapsed. The second trigger is a calf. A cow moose protecting a newborn is, statistically, the most dangerous moose a person is likely to encounter. She does not issue escalating warnings the way a bear does. She does not vocalize, circle, or perform bluff charges to establish a hierarchy. She charges from concealment immediately and without a clear progression of warning signals, because her biology tells her that hesitation costs her calf its life. Colorado Parks and Wildlife confirms that cow moose with calves are responsible for the majority of reported moose attacks in that state each year, and that pattern is consistent across all moose range in North America. The third trigger is a dog. Any dog. Not just dogs that bark or chase, but any dog in the physical presence of a moose, on or off a leash. Moose share thousands of years of evolutionary history with wolves as their primary predator, and when a moose perceives a dog, it does not pause to evaluate whether this specific animal poses an actual threat. It responds to the signal. Documented attacks involve Dobermans, German Shepherds, and Great Danes, large breeds that many people assumed would deter an aggressive moose rather than trigger one. Dogs charged by a moose almost always run directly back toward their owner, which means that a moose following a dog is frequently a moose heading straight for a person. Of all the documented moose encounters in recent years, one from May 2024 captures something that statistics alone cannot convey. Not just the danger of moose, but the particular cruelty of how that danger arrives. Dale Chorman had spent his adult life learning how to be close to wild things without disturbing them. He had hitchhiked to Alaska in his 20s and built a life there as a carpenter and builder, but his real vocation was the natural world. He was an avid birder, a wildlife photographer, and a professional brown bear photography guide who had spent decades taking clients safely into the presence of some of the most dangerous animals on the continent. He understood wild animals at a level that most people who visit Alaska never reach. He knew the difference between an animal that is comfortable with human proximity and one that is not. He had built his understanding of that line over 30 years in the field. Every spring, a cow moose gave birth on the back portion of his 3-acre property near Homer, in a dense thicket of alder and elderberry, where the brush grew so thick that visibility dropped to a few feet in any direction. On May 19th, 2024, that cow had delivered twin calves. Dale and a friend walked in to find them, hoping, if the light and the luck were right, to get a photograph of the newborns in the first hours of their lives. They never saw the mother before she charged. Alaska State Troopers confirmed that the cow moose attacked Dale Chorman and his companion while the two men were already running. His friend survived. Dale did not. Medics pronounced him dead at the scene. He was 70 years old. His son, Nate Spence Chorman, wrote publicly in the days that followed. This was not a hapless fool stumbling into danger. This was a person who went out looking for a great photo, knowing the risks, and got caught in a dangerous moment. The family asked that the moose not be killed. She had done nothing that her biology did not require of her. It was only the second fatal moose attack recorded in Alaska in the previous 30 years. The first had been in January 1995, the encounter described at the opening of this video, where a cow moose on the University of Alaska Anchorage campus, after hours of being harassed by students, stomped a 71-year-old man to death as he walked between buildings. He had not been part of the harassment. He was simply in the wrong place when the animal's threshold was finally crossed. Both victims were experienced people who understood the environment they were moving through. Neither saw it coming in time to do anything about it. That pattern, the invisible threshold, the absence of a clear escalation, runs through nearly every serious moose encounter on record, and it leads directly to the part of this story that carries the largest human cost of all. Have you ever driven through moose country after dark, when the trees close in tight on both sides of the highway and your headlights reach only so far ahead? Leave your answer in the comments, because what comes next is the part of the moose story that receives far less attention than the attack stories. and it accounts for far more deaths. The deadliest moose encounter in North America does not happen on a hiking trail, in a backyard, or on a university campus. It happens on a road. Across the United States, wildlife vehicle collisions involving large ungulates kill approximately 440 people and injure 59,000 more every single year, according to data published by the U.S. National Park Service. The economic cost of those collisions exceeds $10 billion annually in vehicle damage, medical treatment, and emergency response. The moose are responsible for a significant portion of the most severe injuries in that dataset, and the reason comes down to a matter of geometry that most drivers never think about until the moment it becomes relevant. When a car strikes a deer, the vehicle's hood makes contact with the animal's body and absorbs a portion of the impact force, deflecting the deer toward the road. When a car strikes a moose, the hood hits the animal's legs first. Long, narrow legs that transfer almost no energy into the vehicle. The moose's torso and head, weighing up to 1,600 pounds, continue forward at full vehicle speed and pass directly through the windshield. The car does not stop the moose. The moose goes through the car. Nowhere has this problem become more severe than in Newfoundland, Canada, where approximately 117,000 moose share an island with fewer than 500,000 people, and the Trans-Canada Highway runs through prime moose habitat for its entire length across the island. Over 700 moose vehicle collisions occur in Newfoundland in an average year, according to provincial government data. The situation became serious enough that the province created a dedicated moose hotline, a 24-hour emergency line where drivers report the exact location of moose on specific highways so that radio stations can broadcast real-time alerts to other motorists. The government spent $2 million on fencing along one particularly dangerous stretch of highway, and another $1.5 million on a roadside detection system designed to trigger flashing lights when a moose approached the road. A 2014 government review found the detection system failed almost as often as it worked. The moose hotline, the fencing, the detection systems, the warning signs. These are the measures a modern society reaches for when a wild animal and a human infrastructure collide, and neither one is willing to yield entirely. It is a situation that, across North America, is becoming more common as moose populations recover from the suppression of the 20th century and expand into territory that now contains roads, subdivisions, and ski resorts that were not there when the moose arrived. There is one final dimension of moose behavior that helps explain why encounters go wrong so consistently, even for people who know what they are dealing with and are trying to do the right things. Wildlife biologists at the Alaska Department of Fish and Game estimate that approximately 90% of moose charges are bluffs. The moose runs toward you, stops short, retreats. It is a warning, a firm communication that you have entered its space and need to leave it. Most moose encounters that end with a person shaken but uninjured follow this pattern. The animal makes its point, the human backs away, and the interaction concludes without escalation. The problem is that the behavioral signals that precede a genuine charge and those that precede a bluff charge are identical. Hackles raised along the spine and shoulder hump, and ears pinned flat against the skull, head lowered, the lips beginning to move. These signs appear and resolve within 3 to 5 seconds, according to biologists who have studied moose behavior in Colorado's residential mountain corridors. 3 to 5 seconds is not enough time for a human nervous system to process a threat, form a considered response, and act on it. By the time your brain has confirmed that what you are watching is a genuine charge and not a bluff, the moose has already covered most of the ground between you. In September 2022, a bow hunter in the forests of northern Colorado fired an arrow at a bull moose and missed. The moose did not flee after being shot at. It turned, located the hunter, and covered the distance between them in under 2 seconds. The man activated an emergency SOS beacon and hiked 1.5 miles through the forest with serious injuries before reaching a road, and was evacuated by air ambulance to hospital. A responding deputy placed a tourniquet on his arm at the scene. The hunter had fired first. The moose simply answered. And what that incident illustrates, and what the research consistently supports, is that a moose's aggression is not impulsive in the way we tend to imagine. It is not panic or confusion. It is a decision executed with complete physical commitment from the same evolutionary logic that has kept this species alive for hundreds of thousands of years. When something threatens you or your young, you eliminate the threat entirely. You do not negotiate. You do not issue a final warning. You act. That is the animal. That has always been the animal. The only thing that has changed is that we moved into its territory and forgot to account for it. The moose is not the most aggressive animal in North America. Left alone in the forests and wetlands where it has always lived, it spends its days feeding a body that requires 23,000 calories just to survive. It is not territorial. It is not a hunter. What makes it dangerous is where it lives. And the fact that we built our roads, our trails, and our neighborhoods directly through the middle of territory it has occupied for thousands of years, then approached it with the casual confidence of people who have never been afraid of something that eats plants. If this changed how you see wildlife, hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because the next video covers an ocean creature with identical instincts that has hospitalized more people than any shark. That video drops next. I'll see you there.